And right now we're joined by Greg Papa, the voice of the Oakland Raiders. Of course, he works right here, too, host of Chronicle Live and does a lot of hosting here at ComCast Sportsnet Bay Area. Greg Papa, just very difficult news. Where were you when you found out that Al Davis had passed away? How are you taking it, as well as the team right now?
I found out very early this morning, Henry, when John Herrera of the Raiders called me. I don't even know what time it was. I think it was before 4 o'clock in Houston. And he said, I need to come up to your room and speak to you. And I knew right away what it was. And I've been sharing this with Ray for the last several months. Al's not been in good health for a long time, but the last few months have been really difficult, and it's hard to come to grips with it. You know, when you know something's coming, but then when it actually arrives, the emotion is overwhelming. We've all experienced it, but I'm doing this with you now because I think I spoke a lot about death with Al Davis. Whenever anybody died, we'd talk. He'd call me, you know, somebody close to me, people with the Raiders, and he was always so strong. He was very prideful of all the eulogies that people asked him to give. Even Sugar Ray Leonard, the great boxer, in his office, he has a picture of that. So he was always at his strongest in moments like this. So I'm trying to be Al Davis strong today, but it's tough because I'm recalling the one that really got to him was the passing of Gene Upshaw. And he had a hard time with that one. In fact, he said to me, I can't stop crying. And it was a while after Gene's passing. So as some of these really hit home later in his life, he became more reflective on his own life. And as I'm talking to you guys today, I just got off the phone with Tom Flores. It took me hours to even reach out to him because I know he's just torn up by the news. And all he could say was 48 years, 48 years. You know, Tom was his first quarterback when Al came in 63. So it's very hard, very, very hard. I'll blend this out to Ray because I'm trying to think of any one individual who really you could say Al Davis is the Raiders, and it's not a stretch. Like, you can't say that about any other individual, I think, aligned with any one franchise. I mean, the Yankees did a lot of winning before George Steinbrenner came along. The Bears have done a lot of winning since George Halas passed. You know, the Browns with Paul Brown, the Bengals. I thought maybe Red Auerbach would be a kid. I'm trying to give a perspective to people to understand what this man meant. Yes, there was a Raider franchise before Al, but it was brief, and it was not memorable. And the Raiders took flight the day he arrived, and not just what he accomplished, obviously, with the organization, what he accomplished in professional football was what he was most proud of. We had long talks about the 68 original competition committee, how proud he was to serve on that, and just his impact on pro football. And the one thing I want the younger people to understand, Henry, because Al's been beaten up, obviously, the last 8 years. The team has not done well, and I personally think that losing that Super Bowl in 2002 led to a sharp decline in his health. Now, he's had issues, and maybe the family will come out with him, you know, since his passing today. But Al's not been in good health for a while, but it really was precipitated, I think, right around that time. It may have been happenstance, but to know how much this whole thing meant to him, I don't think it was. That loss and the way that team lost that day, you know, we were all just hoping that he would be able to see them win again, and that was his goal. His goal was to win 2 more Super Bowls. And whatever this particular team does achieve this year or in the coming years, we have to understand that it was him to put this team together. He's taken all the crap for what's gone wrong with the franchise in recent years, but he was very proud of, especially the wide receiving core and a lot of the elements of the team that looks like it does have a chance, if it's properly coached, to see through what he wanted to see through. So he went right at the end dealing with football. He was watching tape this week of the Houston Texans. He was getting the depth chart sent over to him last night. And that's the only way he would have gone. He never wanted another way. He was going to be a football lifer until the last moment. So, but for the people that are only remember the Al in the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, pick up a record book and look at what the Raiders accomplished from 1963 through 1985. It is unmatched, certainly in pro football, and Al would argue any team at any sport, any time. But the record is there, the facts are there. And he's the one that built that team. He went away for a short period of time when the AFL and the NFL came together. And he's actually authored a book. I don't know if he'll release it now. His family will release it now. But right around his 80th birthday, I spent many, many hours with him. And he wrote a book, and it was sitting on his nightstand. And he never actually published it. But now that he's passed, maybe we'll read more about him and learn more about him in his own words. But that book is going to be about the whole decade of the 60s and the impact he had on the 60s. So, you're going to read a lot about him and hear a lot about him. But to get the full breadth of what he accomplished in his life, you really have to delve deeply into the research of it and understand what he was. I had a unique perspective of him because the first time I met him was, I think, in the early 90s. And obviously by that point, he was a Hall of Famer. And then to get to know him on a very close level, and I got very close with him the last, I'd say, 8 or 9 years since Bruce Allen left the organization. We got really close. He's a special man. There's many sides to him. Very complicated. He's different in public than he was in private. But as special a person as I've ever been around, is interesting and complicated, but driven, I think, is the one word I would use. A lot of the qualities my father has, and I think that's why I was drawn to him as kind of a mentor in a lot of respects. He taught me a lot about football and just a lot about people. But anyway, he went right to the end, worried about his football team. So let's hope they play well tomorrow for him.
Greg, you referenced earlier how you thought that maybe that Super Bowl loss may have taken a great deal out of him and maybe started his physical decline. Did you see that right away, or is that something that you reflect upon later and look back and say, oh, that I'm noticing something? Or was it something you could tell right away that, that was a moment that he desperately wanted and couldn't get done?
No, I could see it right away. And again, Ray, it could be completely circumstance that his health was going to fail had they won that game. But just how much that one moment meant to him and how much the football team meant to him, I personally think it's more than just coincidence. But, doctors may argue against me. But the mind is a powerful thing. And I think there was a lot to that. And it continued to decline. Had they been able to get out of it quicker, maybe his health would have been better. But people have no idea what the football team meant to him, the amount of time he put into the football team. So I think when the team started to lose, it did take a grip on him physically. And they had not lost that. There were periods where they had ups and downs, but the period that I'm speaking of, the 2002 season, 03, it was a very difficult time for him. So, and it got worse and worse each time I would see him. I'd see him occasionally in the off season, every month or so, and every time you see him, he would look different. But it's like my parents. I'm so far away from them, I don't see them for long stretches. And when I see them, it's like, wow, they really gotten old. So it could be a lot of that. But I think physically, we've seen him. He hasn't been able to get around with the golf cart the last many, many years, and now he's very prideful and never wanted to show that side of himself, but he did because he wanted to be around his football team. But, yeah, I personally think that there was something to that, the way that whole thing went down. And that's why it's sad today, Ray, that he didn't he wanted to see his football team back on top. That was the goal. And that's what he lived for. That's what drove him every day, was to see the team, and not just in the playoffs or win the AFC West. You know, we all know what his goals are. And it's simply to win the Super Bowl every year. I remember how mad he was when the Raiders won the AFC Championship game, beat Tennessee after the 2002 season. Everybody was celebrating except for one man. He wanted no part of the Lamar Hunt Trophy that day. He didn't go anywhere near the stage. It was not a celebration. That was never his goal. People don't understand that, and I admire that about him greatly, because I think we all lose track of our goals in life, and we settle, we compromise. He never did. His goal was not to win the AFC. It was not to win 12 games. It was not to make – his goal was to win the Super Bowl every damn year. And when he said it, and, you know, they won 4 games, people laughed at him. But that was always his goal every single year. And a lot of finish second, so they don't have to pay the salaries that players get when they win. So it was never his goal. His goal was always to win, and that's why it's sad today
that he couldn't see this football team win again.
Greg, just hearing you talk about Al Davis, it's obvious you've spent some quality time with him over the past decade. I want to know, you know, a year from now, or maybe even 2 years from now, when you're sitting with your family or maybe your closest friends and they say, tell me a story about Al Davis, what's going to be one of the first stories you tell them about the owner of the Raiders?
It wouldn't be one isolated moment, to be honest with you. It'd be just whenever you're around them, there's a different feel, and there was a different feel when you're around them with a lot of people in the room, or when there wasn't a lot of people. He was a great showman. You know, when he walked in the lobby as the owner of the Raiders, he was the star. He was the rock star, and people gravitated towards him, and he loved it. He ate it up. But that's not what drove him. And he would spend, you know, countless hours alone in solitude. It's really not one particular moment. You know, there was a couple of stories I probably wouldn't even want to tell at this point where, you know, he looked at life differently. Everything to him was football, where other people had other interests. You know, he was very interested. He's a war nut. You know, a well-read man, but really, when it came right down to it, he would use those observations and things that he learned to try to pertain it to football. It all came back to football for him. But there were some moments where he couldn't understand, you know, the people's thoughts on things because it was different than his when it related to football or talking about players, Henry. But the one thing is just the way it was to be around him and, you know, to be in the company of truly a great man, and that he would solicit the opinion of a lot of people. You know, I think one thing where we grew closer the last few years was when he could not be at practice a lot. He would call me and we'd talk about what I saw at practice, what I saw with the team, because he wasn't able to be there as much. And I think that was a big reason why the team fell down, was his decline in health did not have him around that football team enough. And the players will speak to it, all of them that'll talk to you. He wasn't there every day at practice. He would come typically on Thursday. But he would, when he walked in those gates, everybody knew he was there, and people behaved differently. You know, the head coach of the football team is one thing, but Al is Al. You know, Al's, he's above the coach, obviously. So everybody just kind of sat up straighter and did a better job when he was around, and not having him there because of his health the last few years, or having him in a frail condition, the players that I don't think really understood it. So I think it all, you know, lent itself to the decline in the football team and his health. But to answer your question, Henry, it's hard for me to pick out one moment. There are so many moments, and honestly, some of them I wouldn't want to tell. You know, I want to make sure Al's gone before I even have these conversations, because it tells me he may come back and be pissed off. You know, he's that kind of guy. So